Hello everybody, Hammy Pro here. Today I'm going to be reviewing Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Um, I'm just letting you know I'm playing on the PC, so that might change some things, but other than that, should be good. So, I'm going to just be starting off with what I like, and then I'm going to be ending with the stuff that I don't like as much. Uh, yeah, let's get started. Um, just looking at it, the graphics are pretty good. I mean, nowadays, like, there are really good games out there, so it might not be as good as some, like, crazy, you know, ultra setting PC graphics, but it is still pretty impressive, and I don't know, I like them. Uh, the next thing I like is that when you saw the trailers and stuff, everyone's like, "Oh, it looks like Batman and Assassin's Creed," and though it is still true, it definitely is not a ripoff. It really adds its own things, and though like there's some mechanics like the Assassin's Creed, like climbing and the combat, just kind of like a combination of the Batman stuff and a little bit of the sword fighting in Assassin's Creed. It has fundamental differences, like the Nemesis system, which is another thing I like. They really made it their own game using that. It makes it its own unique feeling, and it isn't just like some weird Assassin's Creed ripoff. And again, it has its own little features, so it combines good things from both the games and adds its own interesting things. Um, and yeah, there are obvious stuff like Wraith World, which is like Eagle Vision, or like the detective mode in Batman, and stuff like that. But again, like no one really cares. Like it has its similarities, but seriously, like it's its own game. Like it's it seems like a less deep version of Assassin's Creed, but a more refined one, I guess you could say, because in Assassin's Creed, it's like an extremely long story, and like there's like really good like writers and stuff. Not that these, I'm just saying this isn't like as deep as Assassin's Creed, but again, like gameplay, I feel is more refined because they're not relying off of like past games. They're kind of making their own new thing, so that makes everything pretty interesting. Another thing I like is the gore in it. I'm not like some guy who like it's like, oh, look at those blood graphics and stuff like that. But I mean, in a game like Lord of the Rings, even though Lord of the Rings is like pretty airy fairy and stuff compared to Game of Thrones and stuff, it takes place in Mordor with orcs and yurks or uriks. But again, since it has those like it takes place in that setting, it kind of makes sense that they made it a bit more adultish. And I think it's good that they added the gore because it just makes it more, I guess you could say, satisfying. It sounds really creepy, but yeah, I guess makes the combat seem more cool, as you could say. Which leads me to the next thing. I do like the combat a lot because they have a variety of Uriks, and it's pretty nice. I mean, like, yeah, they have like the same classes, I guess you could say, but it's never really gets boring, or it gets boring obviously eventually, but it doesn't get boring quickly at all. And yeah, another thing I like is that it doesn't just use the Lord of the Rings title and just make it its own, but at the same time it doesn't like rely heavily on all the lore. So I am pretty into Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and stuff like that, but it's its own thing. Like it's expanding off of that Middle Earth universe, I guess you could say, and I think it's pretty cool because they're adding stuff and they're basing it off of other stuff in the Middle Earth lore and stuff. So I think that's good. They have the right balance. I mean, yeah, they get some lore wrong. And Gollum, which I'll get to later, it's a bit forced, but I don't think they did it that bad. I mean, it didn't take me out of it that much. It was just a bit weird, but it's cool. So yeah, Nemesis system works well. It's interesting. It gets repetitive, however, but it's not like the whole game focuses around it, even though it appears like that at first. Like if you don't do the main missions in advance, different game mechanics, then it would get boring. If you're just hunting captains all day and not advancing in the main storyline, but it gives you enough freedom to explore the side quests and do all this like captain fighting, but at the same time, follow the main storyline and unlock more mechanics and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much most of my positives. Some of the things I don't like, and I mean, there's not that many. I personally have not encountered any glitches. I am playing on the PC, however, so I did hear of other people having glitches on consoles, and I'm sure there's some guy who had some issues on the PC, but glitches are good. I mean, I again, like, it gets a bit repetitive, and the combat isn't that well explained. It has these little pop-ups, but you have to do a lot of exploring yourself. And also, I found that the character progression in terms of getting more powerful kind of happens in a way that you don't notice it. Like, the way I found that it works is that you start, like in this video, I did this like right when I started the game, so I obviously got better and learned more things. That's why I can make this review. But, I mean, if you just start using all the vanilla sword fighting, it gets pretty repetitive and very hard. Whereas what I did is I found these few abilities that really helped me, and like I unlocked the skill trees, and I advanced pretty nicely. So yeah, if you do, I kind of feel like it sort of forces you to do the main storyline, but it's not that big of a deal. I mean, and again, these are my personal opinions. I would see how people would disagree with me, obviously, but I don't know. Also, like in these main missions, like as you can see right now, there's a lot of this walking, and they don't always like have interesting dialogue. Sometimes they do, but they're not always talking about the most interesting stuff, and it gets really boring. But, what are you gonna do? So, yeah, I mean, so I said I'd get to Gollum, and I don't feel like they did horribly on Gollum. I think it's pretty hard. I mean, Gollum being such like a, popular character, not making him a bit cliche. I don't know how to explain it, but I think you find him a bit too early on. But they're not gonna have any new awesome Gollum dialogue. They might have some cool like lines that he says, but there's nothing that interesting with him. No, not. I don't mean it like that, like not interesting, but I mean more like they didn't make anything new with it, with the Gollum, and that's not necessarily a negative, but it just seemed a bit cliche. That's my thoughts. My final thing isn't necessarily their fault, but it's kind of something that kind of spoiled a bit of it for me. Is that like you're taking down Sauron's whole army, but this takes place between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And if you watch The Lord of the Rings or read it, like he's like this game is all about taking down Sauron's army, and in the movies that take place after this, his army is still huge and he like kicks ass and stuff for the most part. And I kind of feel like it's a bit like, like it's gonna get like something has to happen that ruins all this at the end of the game. And I haven't finished the game, but I mean, it just seems like that because of what happens after in terms of the timeline of these Middle-earth stories, I guess you could say. Anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts about Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. I would definitely recommend this game if you're into Lord of the Rings. If you aren't, You would still enjoy it, but I might wait a little bit for the price to go down. But it definitely isn't a bad game. It's just, and it's not a rip-off at all. So, yeah, rate, comment, and subscribe, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this helps you with a decision of if you're gonna get it or not. So yeah, rate, comment, and subscribe, everybody. Peace.